What's up, you guys? My name is Wolf, and welcome back to LEGO Arts. So in the last episode, we did a showcase on part 1 for LEGO Avatar The Last Airbender. So now this time, we are doing part 2 of the showcase, this time featuring more avatars. Specifically, Aang's past lives. So as you can see, we have Roku, Kiyoshi, Kuruk, or Kuru, I'm not sure which pronunciation it is, and Yang Chen. These guys were a bit complicated to do, a lot more than I was anticipating, but I took my time to look at as much photo references for each character as possible, figure out like all the detailing, so what sort of approach I would go for each of these characters, and finally this was the final results. And also the face decals that I used for Roku and Kiyoshi, they belong to minifigs.psd. They're the same people that did the previous Avatar Showcase faces. So I'll include a link to their Instagram in the description below. So go show them some support and love. They do amazing customs there. So another reason why this took quite a while was because from the previous video I was asking again like which waterbender avatar to do because I was uncertain. I didn't get any feedback at all. So finally I decided to I want to move on to other projects. So how about I just do, for this showcase, the previous avatars, including Kuruk, and if I want to do a Legend of Korra showcase, and if you guys want to see a Legend of Korra showcase in the future, I'll save Korra by then. But anyways, again, this was quite a process to do of looking through each of the photos, giving an whole idea on like how to approach each of these characters, but in the end, and this was the final result, and I think each of them came out pretty good. So, as you guys know the whole drill, we're going to take these minifigures one at a time, do a review of them, explain my process, why we go this route, and then go from there. So, without further ado, let's get the pedestal out and get this showcase on the road. Going in reverse order from the Avatar cycle is Avatar Roku, the first and most iconic of the previous avatars to be introduced onto the show. So when doing this character was actually the easiest one compared to the others, and I'll explain like each of them as I go on. So when doing Roku, first what I did was I did a white base color underneath, and then I went back and did the red for the arms and like the whole body. I found that this is much easier, so that way I only had to apply like 2 layers of red instead of multiples to make sure that it blended it all very well. Well, and I went back and did like some of the minor detailing, like the like this black sash that goes all the way around the back. You can see that it kind of went off a little bit, so that was sort of an error on my end. And also, so you can see like this belt piece I drew in with the acrylic marker, and you can see that since they're different blacks, they do come off a little different, but that's okay. The general idea is still there. With the rest of the character having like this fabric and also this clay, this was done in at two separate times. First, what I did was the fabric that I did the same thing with Aang. I took some fabric piece and wrapped it around the body. The ends came off here, but with this part covering it all up, it covered it very well. And actually, with this part was originally supposed to be fabric, but like the same problem with Iroh, I couldn't move the fabric in a way that it actually worked, so I had to narrow it down to clay to sculpt it on. And it was actually okay, because that way the rest of it could have merged on pretty well. So as you can see, like Roku's like hairpiece completely sculpted with clay. It was a little bit difficult on sculpting on his beard, and also like sculpting the hair in a certain way that I wouldn't accidentally like one side come off like too deep, another one a bit too high. So there was a little bit of like measuring out with each of them, and then like continuing on that hair towards the back, and then of course like the top part, like the top piece, and the piece over here was actually done in separate parts as well. I first did like the bottom on like tie, and then went on the top button, and then as you can see like the crown piece, since that's an iconic like Roku piece, I cut those out of like a cereal box, because they were just thin enough to where I could cut through easily, but not super bulky that it looked very odd. Then I carefully like glued those onto the same side, and it came off very well. There's still some articulation like with Roku's hands, not a lot though. though, mostly because like these pieces are very much of a pain, to actually move without either the hand or this piece scraping on each other, aiming on each other. That's always been a super pain with like these Lego builds. And then I went back and like did you could kind of see the Fire Nation detailing that I did on like his row pieces. Those were also done with the marker. I'm sorry that the symbol doesn't fully come off, but since this is a small area, and I'm not super good at that kind of stuff, it's can be a little bit difficult. But he was the first to get done, and was actually like again one of the more easier ones to approach. And Roku was definitely an interesting character to see. I mean, I do like that one episode from Book 3-4, we got to see like his backstory of how he became the Avatar and how the 100-Year War started. I hope we get to see like more adventures of Roku in like the comics and everything. But overall, he's like a very good Avatar, and I think had an interesting story to correlate with Aang's journey on becoming a full-fledged Avatar. And I would have done an Avatar state head for him and for all of them actually. But since all their head pieces were sculpted on with clay, that was sort of a sacrifice I had to take away. But overall, this came out pretty good. So next up on our list is Avatar Kiyoshi, the most badass avatar out of all of these characters. So when like making the base of Kiyoshi was a bit interesting to do. At first I thought about maybe using the same minifigure that I used for Barrett, but I don't have any of those minifigures on me at the moment, so I decided to use the same technique that I used on like making my Boris characters from Bendy. However, I did something different this time, and with the stud pieces that I glued underneath, I glued on the feet, I actually sanded the insides a bit, so that way for like articulation in the legs. There's not a lot because of the skirt, but I applied it enough to where like if I could move the legs, the movements would be so much smoother and a lot easier to do in the past, because that was always the thing that bugged me. But looking at the rest of the figure, I didn't do the same base coloring that I should have done when I did Roku and Shin, because it skipped my brain at the time. But I applied on like sort of like this very light green base color first, and then mixed together a couple of other greens for like the outlines of her kimono. Then as you can see, it continues on down to the rest of her outfits. There's supposed to be like more detailing on like the green, on like this green outlining, but again, it didn't come out quite well. I also did like multiple like layers down for like sort of the different representations of her outfit, because she did have like multiple layers underneath. Like these ones, like these, you can see like the green outline. They represent like her armor. Ooh, sorry if that's super bright. And then like this grass light green represents like the like more of the dress piece underneath, and then like the dark green represents like the bottom robe. Oh, but I'm definitely glad that I approached with this a bit more than what I did Weiss in Volume 7, because I did that in multiple layers. That was a mistake. Well, it still worked out in the end, but I didn't want to repeat. I want to repeat it on that. But anyways, with the rest of the arms, you could see of like, again, different like base coloring. Like the light green was the base, and then went back and did sort of like this, I did sort of like this swampy kind of green color. I noticed that like it was like a yellowish green kind of color, so I used like the yellow that I used for the background in Bendy, and then mixed that with green to produce like this color. I'm not sure what to call it. I'm calling it like swampy green, but I think there's a better name for that. You can see that like she's also got like the arm guards on both her arms. Actually articulation in the arms, because I sanded the sides. I also smoothed out the inside of the arms a little bit. But instead of using the sander and like right off the bat, I used this sort of like mold remover tool. Well, I think that's what it's called. I think there's another name for it, but it's basically designed to remove like small like layers of like plastic and other materials without damaging the overall mold of it. all of it. So I'm giving it a try, and so far it's working out pretty well. It's very, very cool. And you can also see, like, the fans. And I'm not entirely proud of the fans, like, and it's like, if I actually had official Lego fans, I would have, like, painted them up in gold, and they would have looked nicer. But I don't have any of those parts, so I decided to just go on with my usual Lego route, Lego customizing route, and just like take some parts that usually aren't supposed to be merged together, and just sculpted them all on. I sculpted on the entire fan here, and then went back and did like the gold base coloring, and then like did the detailing. There was more detailing on the gloves, like on the inside. Inside they were supposed to be white. But because the fans are practically merged onto the hands, I wasn't too concerned about that. It's just like I've done in the past that I put on detailing that would have looked so well, and that would have looked so cool, only to be covered up by something else. So I didn't waste time on there. And when looking at the face decal is very well done of how they design like Kyoshi's makeup, as well as like her general facial expression. It's very similar to Suki's, my apologies, but with like a different mouth design. And this would have come out so better, but for some reason the printer didn't print them off correctly, and it's not low on ink. I don't know why it did this. So I tried to repair it as best I could. I apologize if this does look slightly off, but this was better. Is better than like the original, than how it originally printed off. You can see like on the back, like with her hair is like fully sculpted on, including the back, and also of course like her headpiece. This was actually this turned out much better than how I almost approached it. Actually, like if you remember when I did Suki with her headdress, one of the problems was that it was a bit too thick for a minifigure head. So I took with the cereal box with Roku, I did the same thing with Kiyoshi's on how I traced out like her headdress design. Then I cut it out, did a couple of measurements to make sure I got it right, and then glued it on. And then like with these little threads dangling off here, I cut those out of like some string, jewelry string, then glued those onto the back of the headdress, then carefully painted all this in gold, and I was very glad that none of the paint from either the hair or the gold accidentally slipped onto the face, because that would have been a nightmare to try and fix. And then I went back and did like two separate golds on this. I light gold for like these fan parts, and then this sort of like dark gold for like the base of the headdress, and then finalize on some minor detailing on like on the kimono. You can see like just continuing on to the back. Finding like the backs for like each of these characters was also a pain, because as all the photos I saw focused more on the front, on the fronts of their outfits. So a lot of this was very much just a wild guess of how they look on the back. But I was very lucky to find a couple of photos that showcased their hair designs. So at least those came off accurate. They're not the smoothest, but they still match up to the overall base of the character. And overall, I think this turned out pretty good. It wasn't super complicated, but I do think this was the second hardest to do. The first hardest we're about to make pretty soon. And overall, when doing Kiyoshi's design, I think it turned out like a pretty good representation of what she would look like in Lego format. Next up on our list is Avatar Kuruk, the go with the flow kind of avatar. This was actually the hardest one to do. He was the last one to do, and he was the hardest. Not necessarily in detailing wise, because that goes to either Yang-Chen or Kiyoshi, but when doing all these 3D elements, applying them onto him, and also making sure that everything, except for the head, everything was like articulated and everything, oh my god, it was so tedious. It is to the point where I actually had to scrap one of my original ideas to approach him and start over again. It was that much of a pain. So for his headpiece, this is the only head that out of all of them, that I didn't print off a decal and include it onto a different head. This is actually an extra headpiece, like the same one that I used on Crow from Ruby. I just saw the expression and thought that like that just suits his personality very well. And since he also had like this little beard on there too, I just painted up a little bit, and this actually matches up with kuruk pretty well. And then also when doing like this fabric on the bottom part of his parka it did take a couple of times to do, especially on cutting it out. Originally, I thought that I had messed it up and everything, but when I look back, I managed to get it right, and it's just like, oh, okay, that works. With this clay part, now you can see of like the fur on the parka, it actually was supposed to come out like this. Like, at first I thought about trying the fabric again, but then realizing that like, no, the fabric's not going to move in the way that I want it to. But I also tried on like, I'm making like these parts that hang off of the fur, or like these loose ends from there. Those were supposed to be in fabric, and at first I had a pattern going, but then the glue started to like dry too fast. Some of them were like too small, some of them were too big. They couldn't fit on this. They couldn't fit on it anymore. So much to the point where I was just like, no, this isn't gonna work. So I cut the whole thing off, resculpted it on, and just went ahead with the clay. But that's all right, because as you can tell, there's still some articulation into the hands. Not too much. In fact, I think this one is stuck. Are you stuck? No, you're not stuck. You just need some force. Alright, so it's still articulation there. I still would have loved to keep it up with that fabric, but since that wasn't working, I had to improvise a little bit. Anyways, with the rest of the character, I used like this peacock blue as like the base, sort of like the base coloring for his overall outfit. And then with the hands, as you can see, I painted the insides of them white to match up with his gloves, the gloves that we see. And see, since he's not really going to be holding anything in them, and it's just like, okay, this is perfect. I can do it like this, and came out pretty well. As you can see, like there's some clay to represent like the outline fur going all the way around the bottom. It did take a couple of tries to make sure that like it was all like evened out a bit, but once that was passed, it starts to turn out pretty good. And I don't think I did a lot of base detailing like on the legs. Since there's not really a lot, but there is articulation that if I wanted to move him, hang on, let's get him off the pedestal a bit. If I wanted to move him, you could see like some articulation, but not a lot because of the fabrics. I also detailed on like his boots a bit. You could see the outline from the bottom of the shoe going all the way around the feet, and then like more fur on the legs, and then finally he came in sculpting on his bear skin hat. Surprisingly, it didn't turn out as terrible as I thought it was going to be. I thought this was going to be the most tedious part, but it was actually the easiest. That's yes. I sculpted on like the overall design first. Like started on the top, then worked my way down to the bottom. I included on like the teeth, and then went back, did the detailing for the eyes, sculpted out like the ears, and carefully detailed the claws. This one could have come out a little bit better. By the time I got to that, the clay had solidified to a point that this one was not going to come out entirely well, but it still matches up with Kuruk's overall design. And so even though he, I'm pretty sure the Avatar community can agree that he was not really the best Avatar. Doing his overall outfit design was kind of interesting to do, especially since he had like two different designs. Like one, they both had the overall outfit, but one had like no gloves, and showed his hair, and then this one showed like the gloves and his hair. I thought about, I decided to do like the gloves and the bear hat, because it was a bit more of a challenge to do, and also And also, I think matches up with his character a bit more than the other ones. It's a pretty cool water tribe trait, and trait on like these fur parkas, I guess, that they have, and was something I thought about doing for Sokka, but I didn't do it at the time. I might do it again in the future though, as sort of like an alternate outfit for him. And last but certainly not least on our list is Avatar Yang Chen. And Shin, when doing this character, was different from my original route. So I mentioned before, when doing Roku, I did like the base white for this character. Afterwards, I went back and did like this gold yellow that I used for my bendy minifigures. I used that as the base first, and then went back and did like the orange. I probably should have done the orange, especially on this side first, before putting the arms back in. Like, there is articulation in the arms. That wasn't the problem. But what was the problem is that I couldn't remove this arm so I could apply on the orange with the rest of it. I did do like the sanding process first, and chipped away a little bit on the arms, so that was okay. But still, I should have done a little bit better beforehand, before like doing the rest of the stuff. But in the end, it all turned out okay, so I'm not complaining too much about it. I did a separate like brighter yellow for underneath, made like this sash, and then like this like color piece on top, and continues on to the back. Again, since I didn't have a lot of like information of how the back should have looked, I didn't do a whole lot there. On the arms were very similar of how I did Aang's, but did like base yellow and then like this orange on. I originally thought about like maybe doing like this long sleeve, extending the sleeves, because how Yang Chen's outfit looks is that like she's got like those very wide sleeves. I almost thought about like trying to do either fabric or clay, but neither of them came out pretty well. None of them could like blend in pretty well with the arm itself. So in the end, I just scrapped that idea and settled for regular sleeves. You can see like I painted on like the arrows on the hands. Same thing with Aang. Looking more on the torso, so you can see like some detailing over there. Moving this light a little bit, so you can kind of see. I tried to replicate like the air nomad symbol on her like meditation beads. You can clearly see it did not fully come well. And I actually had a different idea with that. I thought about using like a blank stud piece as like the base centerpiece for the necklace, but it came out a bit too big. Like if I put it on there, it'd cover up a majority of the torso or so, and I did not want to settle for that, so I scrapped that and just settled for sculpting on with clay. I would have sculpted on like some more of these beads, but the way how the necklace, I guess, like attaches around it, that would have looked super bulky, and also would have been, again, very tedious to do. So I just settled down to like doing this like string wrapping around and doing like just a few beads that still represent the overall idea of like how this character looks. Looks and how she's supposed to look. So this was actually an idea that I wanted to do for my Doctor Strange character. I'm sure that thinking about it more, or I might go back and try and fix him to make it in a way that's to make him in a way that I really want him to look. Right now he's okay, but I'm thinking I can do better. Anyways, you can see sort of like these red strands here. These represent like the sort of like the fabric that's on the beads. And the beads that was super tedious to do. I tried cutting like very small pieces of string, but the way how they were cut was so small to the point that they unraveled together and formed like very tiny bits of individual string. And it was also tedious of gluing them on and onto the beads without getting my finger stuck in the way. But once that was out of the way, the rest of it was pretty straightforward. The face is the same face decal that I used for Blake. I thought that was a very like good expression for Yang Chen. The eyes, they printed off like a silverish. That was not the original idea, but looking back at it, it's like I can work with this. This was pretty good. And so I kept those on, and then like you can see the Airbender tattoo continues on to the back of the head, and the head is actually something I'm trying out. This is a brand new technique. one of the things that I did, like, when I was making Iroh was, part of me wasn't super satisfied with it. Don't get me wrong, I really like how he came out, but one of the things that kind of bothered me was the top of his head. I kind of felt like bulged out a bit. It's like, it's not super noticeable, but it's a bit too big. And so what I did was I sanded off the connector piece on the minifigure head, and I sanded off completely. And then at first I was just gonna like sculpt on the hair, but then I thought that, like, how about we try to sculpt on like the top part a little bit, and see how that looks. And it actually turned out better than I thought. And then with the rest of her hair, I did this first, and then rather than doing like a braid, I just individually carved out each of these pieces one at a time, and just let the clay dry on each of them, and turn out overall, and actually turn out pretty good. So this whole idea on doing on just like sanding off the top and sculpting onto the rest is sort of an experimental thing. I might try this with a few more characters in the future, but if it's something that doesn't look right or just looks a little bit weird, I'll just scrap that idea and just keep that piece on and sculpt around it. But overall, I think this turned out a pretty cool experiment for Yang Shin. It matches up pretty well with like her character design overall. I probably could have done better on like the paint quality of how this looks. Like on this camera standpoint, it looks kind of weird, but if I lift it up slightly, you can kind of see where the hair is supposed to be. It's supposed to be on the, like, there. The arrows probably could have come out a little bit better. What I probably should have done was the same thing that I should have done with Weiss, and just like digitally draw those on first, and then print the whole thing off. But aside from like the small cons here and there, overall, this turned out as a very interesting character to do, and probably would have had more 3D elements had I found a way to work out the sleeves and apply on like more beads. It's like these were supposed to come out a lot smaller, but they didn't. But overall, with this whole character, I think this came out pretty good, and is a interesting representation of what Yang Shin would look like in LEGO format. And that's gonna do it for this episode of LEGO Arts. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I decided to get the minifigures from the previous showcase and put them in here because I think it all looks cool together. It's a very cool representation of like how long of a process this was, and this would have been a even longer process had I chosen to do all of them at the same time. I specifically chose to do these parts separately because I knew that if I tried to cram it all in together, I would be stuck doing this for a while, and it would have taken longer of all the detailing, looking at multiple photo references over and over again. And I'm really glad that I decided to do the separating route. So that way I would only focus on like one particular showcase, and then once that was done, can move on to the next one. Though, if you're wondering, like, where are some of the other Avatar characters, like Ozai, Azula, Ty Lee, Mei, Cabbage Man, and a lot more Avatar characters. Those for now will be put into like the maybe category. Like, if you want to see like more Avatar customs in the future, like from Last Airbender or a Legend of Korra showcase, feel free to let me know in the comment section below, so I can start planning after the 100 special. So far, what I have after 100th is a Devil May Cry Wave 2 for Devil Trigger Edition, and Star Wars: The Clone Wars. I'll give out more information on those later on. So, on the topic of Star Wars, the next episode of LEGO Arts is going to be Clone Troopers Part 2, where there will be showcasing Bly, Fives, Echo, Waxer, Boyle, and Jesse. Then, after recording that showcase, I plan to get back to work on my Miles Morales remake minifigure. It's coming along pretty well. I might need to print him off a new torso decal, because I kind of want to make it more accurate to the upcoming PlayStation 5 game coming out later on this year. I'm really excited to play that game. So when I get enough idea of how to make that character, I'll know exactly of how to do that. And yeah, we'll proceed on through there. We're coming very, very close to the 100th special. I'm not spoiling of what's on what's in store. But I'm really excited. To showcase to you guys the next coming up showcases. And yeah, that's gonna pretty much do it. So, if you guys would like to see more videos like this in the future, be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. It really helps us with less space, like projects, and we're mainly gonna have some fun. So anywho, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, hit that like button, comment below what you think, share with your friends, subscribe to YouTube, follow me on Twitch. And here's the half of the road. Woo! Thank you guys, and I'll see you next time. Winning Ice Moon Rises!